I've been saying for some time, if I had to, I'd rather take my chances in front of a High Court judge than any other institution in this land. And that was vindicated earlier today when the High Court gave permission for a judicial review of the bizarre, barmy, and deeply sinister government decision. No, Parliament decision, with only 36 MPs voting against it, to consider the, well, how shall I put it, not to be cruel, but to be as accurate as possible, tree-hugging, peace-loving, porridge-eating, peaceful, non-violent, civil disobedience activists called Palestine Action. They have never hurt a lamb. They have never killed a fly. All they do is throw red paint on weapons that are destined for the massacre and the red blood of innocents in Palestine. Most sensible people, whilst not wishing to clamber through a factory roof themselves, most people with any kind of conscience would regard them as very British heroes. Most people would regard them as the kind of son or daughter that you would hope that you would raise. The kind of son or daughter who prefers red paint to red blood. That's what most ordinary people consider this kind of activism. It is a crime to damage a warplane, yes, but it is a far, far greater crime for that warplane, unannounced, secretly, to be serving a genocidal maniac like Benjamin Netanyahu, like Ben Gvir, like Smotrich, like the cluster of fascists not seen together since the Wannsee Conference just outside of Berlin in the war years, in the Holocaust years. Most people in this country, more than 80% of them, are completely opposed to what is being done to the Palestinians in Gaza. Most people, 80% of them or more, do not approve of the British government's involvement in this great crime, in this new Holocaust. So the government has got a problem. No jury in the land would convict of terrorism a hairy that tried to do their best to stop mass murder in Gaza, which, I remind you, is the legal obligation on everyone, including every government in the world, who are legally bound to do anything that they can to stop genocide. Anyway, the government went ahead, despite the advice of sound minds, despite the advice of people who agree with the government's policy, but realize this is going to lead to mass arrests of thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, and included amongst them will be old ladies in dog collars who no jury in the world could possibly send to prison for terrorism, when all they were trying to do was peacefully disobey the government's unjust characterization of Palestine Action as terrorists. Anyway, their eminences on the bench gave the green light today to an epic court battle that will now ensue, in which the justice, not the political spasm that led to only 36 MPs opposing this madness, but a review of the justice of this whole affair will now be conducted. And I'll tell you now, the government is bound to lose. To save the taxpayer money, to save the jail time of those already behind bars, because They know that they can't convict such people, so they keep them in prison for as long as possible, awaiting trial, so that the process becomes the punishment. They know they're going to be found not guilty and walk free, so some of them have been inside for 18 months, waiting for their day in court when they will surely be cleared. So, 2.5 cheers for the justices on the High Court bench. But when you've got a parliament like ours, when you've got police like ours, when you've got a BBC like ours, when you've got the civil servants like ours, when you've got a media like ours, when one after the other of your institutions have failed or turned into the opposite of their stated role in our society, you've got to be grateful to the British High Court. Now, Donald Trump was in town. He was in the country, but he was actually almost in my town. He was very, very close to me. The chattering of the flying fortresses, or whatever they call these double helicopters with 2 sets of choppers on them, were everywhere. The police were everywhere. The G-men were everywhere. It must have cost millions. Wait, it cost tens of millions for Donald Trump to come and play golf in Scotland on his own golf course as part of his bid to have Turnberry included in the World Open Golf Championships. I hope, by the way, a bid that is successful will be good for the local people, will be good for the local economy. But Donald Trump didn't half humiliate the British Prime Minister. And such is the odour in which the British Prime Minister is currently held, most people in Britain cheered it to the rafters. You know, I've called him everything. I've called him a block of wood in which the birds perch, a block of wood and the birds try to nest in him. I've called him the Tin Man. I've called him a robot, but never did he cut a more pitiful figure. And unwise of him, he brought his wife along to witness his humiliation at the hands of a visiting foreign leader who greeted him as if it was Starmer that was the visitor, and the kind of visitor that the cat drags in from time to time, if you'll get my drift. I mean, Trump might as well have put a Dunce's cap on his head. He might as well have slapped him about his jowls. He might as well forced him onto his knees to kiss his shiny shoes. That's the truth of it. Not only was Starmer completely humiliated on issues like calling the mayor of London, thrice elected mayor of London, a repulsive little runt. Oh no, that was me that called him a repulsive little runt. I forget what Trump called them, but he called them names. And all that Starmer could muster in his defense was, actually, he's a friend of mine, his own party colleague, his own elected mayor of the capital city of the country is being rubbished by a visiting foreign leader, and Starmer can't even stand up to defend him. But not only that, he made short shrift of Keir Starmer's claim to be in favour of free speech. So there's 2 insults. Sadiq Khan, the mayor, and then the lack of free speech in Britain, in which Donald Trump, the monster, was right, and Keir Starmer, the Labour Prime Minister, was wrong. Trump said that he was disturbed by the lack of free speech in Britain, by the ceaseless efforts of the British government to force censorship and tyranny on American tech companies who are protected in their own country by the First Amendment, a First Amendment made ludicrous in our country by a whole battery, from Ofcom to the Online Safety Act. Free speech is being murdered in plain sight in Britain. And again, all Starmer could muster was, we've had free speech for a long time in this country. Well, maybe we did. We actually had more free speech 100 years ago in Britain than we currently have today. And on it went. Immigration. Trump ridiculed the British. But I remind you, it was Trump was the foreign statesman visiting our country, not the other way round. Trump laid into Starmer about immigration, about the ways in which Europe as a continent was committing suicide, demographic suicide, and soon, one day, will not be Europe at all. Now, on all of these things, Trump has a substantial block of support in Britain for what he said. But even those must have felt humiliated for their own country to see their Prime Minister being treated like this. Well, Trump could not have written the speech that Keir Starmer then gave, because it was too bad to have been delivered by Donald Trump. It was too utterly confused, contradictory, looking in both ways, filled with double entendres, a promise wrapped in a condition, concealed in a deceit. I refer to the Prime Minister's promise or threat to recognize a Palestinian state in September. Why do these guys always wait till September? Because, of course, they probably aren't going to do it in September, but they'll get 4 or 5 weeks of publicity claiming that they are going to. But unlike Macron, Starmer put a condition on it. He said, I'm going to recognize a Palestinian state. Didn't say where, didn't say what kind of state, didn't say when it would happen. Something that he's not in control of in any case. But even then, he made it conditional. He said, I'll recognize a Palestinian state unless there's a ceasefire, unless I see evidence that Netanyahu is committed to, you never thought you'd hear these words again, the peace process. The peace process that for more than 25 years they pretended was going on, endless process, absolutely no peace, still less any justice. But then Netanyahu's government called an end to the peace process. Last week, they annexed the West Bank. In the last 22 months, they have annihilated 1 in 5 of every Palestinian human being in the Gaza Strip, which has now been hit by the equivalent of 3 Hiroshima nuclear bombs. So he gave Netanyahu the out to say, sure, I'm committed to a peace process, and I'm trying to get a ceasefire, but it's these Johnnies down in the Gaza Strip. They won't stop hitting our occupation forces. Every day now, 2, 3, 5 of the occupying soldiers are being medevaced out, either to the hospital in Israel or straight to the morgue. And most people to whom Starmer was presumably speaking, presumably trying to appease people that are horrified by what's going on in Gaza, listened to Starmer's speech, thought about it for a minute, and either burst into tears or burst into laughter. I'll need to hurry up because I'm nearly out of time. I told you in the last show, maybe the one before that, how concerned I am by Donald Trump's physical and mental health. I'm looking at this kind of elephantitis, Ted Heath style, tree trunk ankles. I'm looking at that shake that he's got in his hand, the kind that Hitler had, visible to everyone in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. But more because I listen carefully to what Donald Trump says. And I have to listen every day because tomorrow it will be different from that he said today. In turn, different from that he said yesterday. He told Putin he had 50 days to end the war in Ukraine. He's just cut it to 10 to 12 days, which if it's 10, is now only a little more than a week. After which, Trump is going to step up every part of America's war effort, Joe Biden's war effort. Trump is going to double down on every sinew of the war, from weapons supplies, intelligence supplies, and, of course, tariffs. He can't go a sentence without using the word tariffs. And then he said, actually, I don't want to talk to Vladimir Putin anymore. I don't want to call him. This is the art of the deal man, right? This is the peace president, the guy who's headed for the Nobel War Prize, Peace Prize. He doesn't want to talk to the president of the Russian Federation, who has so upset his wife, Melania, that the President of the United States no longer wants to talk to him, except today he announced that Melania really likes Vladimir Putin and they get on well together and that he's looking forward to meeting with Putin. It's just as well the Russians don't pay as much attention to what Donald Trump says as I do, because if they did, that whistle you're hearing might be an incoming Iskander. It's all coming up tonight. I've got two great guests and some of the best calls you'll find anywhere on air, anywhere in the world. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.